The silence in the boardroom wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, the kind of silence that makes grown executives avoid eye contact. At the head of the long glass table sat Richard Whittaker, CEO of Whittaker Industries. Billionaire, visionary, a man whose signature could move markets or ruin holidays. And right now, his fingers were steepled, his jaw tight, his eyes cold. Outside the windows, snow drifted down over the city. Christmas decorations glowed on nearby buildings. The world looked warm. Inside this room, something was about to break. Richard cleared his throat. "I'll get straight to it," he said. 3 words. No warmth. No build-up. Every manager in the room felt their stomach drop. Due to restructuring and end-of-year losses, all Christmas bonuses are canceled. No gasps. No protests. Just shock. Someone swallowed hard. Someone else stared at their hands. These bonuses weren't luxuries. They were rent, medical bills, plane tickets home, kids' gifts. For many employees, it was the one bright thing keeping them afloat. Richard didn't explain further. He didn't apologize. He simply stood up, adjusted his tailored coat, and said, "Meeting adjourned." As he walked out, no one stopped him. But the story doesn't begin in that boardroom. It began hours earlier. On a plane, Richard Whittaker sat in seat 2A, first class, gripping the armrest like it had personally betrayed him. His 6-month-old daughter, Emma, was screaming. Not fussing, not whining, screaming. The kind of cry that cuts through noise-canceling headphones. The kind that makes strangers glare and patience evaporate. For 3 straight hours, Emma had cried as if her tiny lungs were powered by pure fury. Richard had tried everything. He walked the aisle, bouncing her gently, whispering reassurances that were really for himself. He warmed bottles, changed diapers, played soft classical music he didn't even like. Nothing worked. The looks from other first-class passengers grew sharper by the minute. A woman across the aisle sighed loudly. A man behind him muttered, "Unbelievable." A flight attendant offered suggestions with a smile that was starting to crack. Then came the announcement. The pilot's voice, calm but pointed. "Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your cooperation in ensuring a comfortable journey for everyone." Richard felt heat rise to his face. For the first time in years, money couldn't fix this. And that terrified him. He was used to control, used to being listened to, used to silence when he wanted it. Emma cried harder. Then, something unexpected happened. A woman from economy class stood near the curtain dividing sections. She couldn't have been older than 30. Worn coat, tired eyes. She hesitated, then spoke softly. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, her voice barely louder than the engines. "But may I try?" Richard blinked. "Try what?" Before he could respond, she gently took Emma into her arms. The crying didn't stop immediately, but it softened. The woman swayed, hummed. Not a song, just a steady, low sound. Something ancient, something calm. Within seconds, Emma's screams turned into hiccuped sobs. Then silence. The cabin exhaled. Richard stared. "How did you?" he began. The woman smiled, exhausted but kind. "I used to work 2 jobs. Daycare during the day, hospital cleaning at night. You learn a few tricks." She handed Emma back, now asleep. Richard muttered a thank you, awkward, unsettled. As the woman turned to leave, Emma's tiny hand latched onto the woman's finger. The woman paused. "Kids don't care how much you're worth," she said gently. "They just want to feel safe." Then she disappeared behind the curtain. Those words stayed with Richard far longer than the flight. That night, back in his penthouse overlooking the city, Richard sat alone in his office. The apartment was immaculate, silent, cold. He placed Emma in her crib, watching her chest rise and fall. Safe. That word echoed. He poured himself a drink and opened his laptop. Emails flooded the screen. Subject lines like, "Bonus confirmation? Holiday pay question, please advise." Richard didn't open them. Instead, he clicked on a file labeled Community Outreach, Deferred. He frowned. He hadn't approved that folder in months. Inside were dozens of unread letters, physical letters scanned by his assistant and set aside. Letters from employees' families, from schools, from community centers. Whittaker Industries, once sponsored before budget cuts. One subject line stood out. "For Mr. Whittaker, from Lily, age 9. Richard hesitated. He almost closed the laptop. Almost. Instead, he clicked. The letter appeared on screen, written in uneven handwriting, scanned with crayon smudges along the edges. and the first line made his chest tighten. Dear Mr. Whitaker, my mom says you're the reason she works so hard. So I wanted to write to you before Christmas. Richard leaned back in his chair. He hadn't planned to read it. He definitely hadn't planned for it to matter. But something about that plane, that woman, Emma's tiny hand. He kept reading. And with every sentence, something inside him, something buried under years of profit margins and board meetings, began to crack. Because Lily's letter wasn't asking for money. It was asking for something else. And Richard Whitaker had no idea that by the time he reached the end, the decision he'd made that morning would no longer be possible to live with. Richard read the letter once, then again, and then a third time, slower. Dear Mr. Whitaker, my mom works at your factory. She comes home tired, but she always smiles when she talks about Christmas because that's when she says miracles happen. Miracles. Richard scoffed quietly, but the sound lacked conviction. Lily's handwriting wobbled across the page. Some letters were backward, some words crossed out and rewritten. It wasn't polished. It wasn't strategic. It was honest. She says my bonus present this year is that we might visit Grandma if the bonus comes. Grandma lives far and misses us a lot. I told my little brother not to worry because good people always keep promises. Richard's fingers tightened around the glass in his hand. Promises. He hadn't promised anyone anything. Not directly. But somewhere along the line, expectations had been built. Hope had been allowed to exist. Lily continued. I know you're very busy and important. I just wanted to say thank you for giving my mom a job. She says you're a good man even if people don't know it yet. Richard stared at the screen. People don't know it yet. The words felt like a quiet challenge. He closed the laptop abruptly, as if it had said too much. This was sentimental nonsense, he told himself. A child's letter didn't change balance sheets, didn't erase losses, didn't justify reckless generosity. That's what bonuses were to him now. Reckless. He finished his drink and stood, walking to the floor-to-ceiling window. The city sparkled below. Endless lights. Endless lives. All depending on decisions made in rooms like his. His phone buzzed. A message from Mark Feldman, CFO. Boards backing the bonus cancellation. PR team preparing internal memo. Want to release tomorrow morning. Richard typed back one word. Proceed. The message sent. Decision finalized. Or so he thought. The next morning, Whitaker Industries felt different. Not louder. Not angrier. Quieter. Asterisk employees walked slower. Conversations died mid-sentence. Desks that were usually decorated with tinsel and photos sat bare. The internal memo had gone out at 9:01 a.m. BY 9:05. Everyone knew BY 9:30. Someone was crying in the restroom. BY noon. Hope had officially left the building. Richard watched it all from behind glass walls. He told himself this was leadership. Tough calls. Necessary pain. Then his assistant, Janet, knocked. She didn't wait for permission. I need a minute, she said, closing the door behind her. That alone was unusual. Janet had worked for Richard for 11 years. She knew when not to cross lines. Right now, she didn't care. My sister works on the manufacturing floor, Janet said. She's been saving for months to bring her kids home from foster care. The bonus was the last thing she needed. Richard looked away. I'm sorry, he said, automatically. Janet shook her head. That's not what hurts. She pulled something from her folder and placed it on his desk, another letter. This came in this morning, Janet said. Addressed to you. I wasn't going to give it to you. But then I remembered you read one last night. Richard's eyes snapped up. How do you know that? Janet met his gaze. Because you don't usually ask about letters from children. Silence stretched. Richard opened the envelope. This letter was shorter. Messier, dear sir, I don't know how to write good. My dad says try anyway. He works nights and sleeps in the car sometimes, so we can keep the house. Richard stopped reading. The room felt suddenly too small. Janet spoke softly. There are dozens like that. We stopped scanning them after budget cuts. But they kept coming. Why? Richard asked, his voice lower now. Because when people don't have power, Janet said, they write to the people who do. She turned to leave, the door. She paused. You once told me Whitaker Industries wasn't just a company. It was a responsibility. Then she was gone. Richard sat alone. Again. Only this time. The silence wasn't empty. It was loud. That evening, Richard went home early. He didn't open his laptop. Didn't answer calls. He sat on the floor of Emma's nursery, back against the crib, watching her play with a stuffed bear. She dropped it, looked at him, waited till he picked it up and handed it back. Emma laughed out a small sound. But it landed hard. She trusted him completely. No contracts. No memos. No conditions. Trust. Richard's phone buzzed again. Another message from Mark. Media caught wind of bonus cancellation. Some backlash online. Nothing major yet. Backlash. The word felt thin compared to the weight pressing on his chest. He opened his laptop anyway. Richard closed his eyes. He remembered the woman on the plane. You can't buy silence. You earn it. He remembered Emma's tiny hand gripping a stranger's finger. He remembered a version of himself, years ago, sleeping on a couch in a shared apartment, promising himself that if he ever made it, he wouldn't forget what it felt like to hope. Somewhere along the way, he had. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Mr. Whitaker, a nervous voice said. This is Tom Alvarez. I work maintenance at the West plant. I don't know if this is appropriate, but my daughter wrote you a letter and Richard swallowed. I know, he said. There was a pause. You do? Yes, Richard said. And I'm sorry it took me this long to listen. Another pause. Then Tom said, does that mean anything? Richard looked at Emma, then at the city, then back at the letters scattered across his desk. It means, he said slowly, that I may have made the wrong decision. He ended the call and immediately dialed another number. Mark, Richard said when the CFO answered. Cancel the PR memo. A beat. Richard, the board. Can wait, Richard cut in. Schedule an emergency meeting. Tonight. Another pause. Longer this time. You're serious, Mark said. Richard looked at Lily's letter one more time. Yes, he said. And this time, we're not talking about numbers. He hung up. Outside, snow continued to fall. Inside, something long frozen had finally begun to thaw. But the hardest part wasn't changing his mind. It was standing in front of everyone tomorrow and admitting he was wrong. The boardroom was full again. But this time, no one spoke. Executives sat stiffly, unsure why they'd been called back so late. Coffee cups went untouched. Phones stayed face down. Richard Whitaker stood at the head of the table. No slides. No spreadsheets. No rehearsed talking points. Just a man holding a stack of letters. I won't take long, he said. That alone made everyone look up. Yesterday morning, I canceled Christmas bonuses, Richard continued. From a financial standpoint, it was defensible. From a leadership standpoint, he paused. It was a failure. The word landed heavy. No CEO in that room had ever used it about himself. I forgot something fundamental, Richard said. This company doesn't exist because of numbers. Numbers exist because of people. He lifted the top letter. This was written by a 9-year-old named Lily. A murmur rippled through the room. Richard read aloud. Not the whole letter. Just the lines that mattered. My mom says miracles happen at Christmas. His voice tightened, just slightly. I don't know about miracles, he said. But I do know about choices. He set the letters down. Effective immediately, all Christmas bonuses are reinstated. A breath was released, collective, sharp, disbelieving. And not only that, Richard added. They will be increased by 10%. Someone gasped. Mark, the CFO, leaned forward. Richard, the projections, I've seen them, Richard said calmly. We'll delay the office expansion. Freeze executive incentives. Including mine. Silence. Then something unexpected. Applause. Not polite. Not restrained. Raw. Uncontrolled. Richard didn't smile. This isn't about applause, he said. It's about accountability. Starting with me. He looked around the room. Meeting adjourned, he said softly. The news spread faster than the cancellation ever had. Phones buzzed. Emails flew. Word traveled floor to floor, plant to plant. People cried again. But this time, for a different reason. In the West plant, Tom Alvarez hugged his daughter so tightly she laughed and told him to stop. In a small apartment across town, Lily's mother stared at her phone, rereading the message over and over. They kept the promise, she whispered. Lily jumped up and down. I told you good people do. That evening, Richard returned home. No meetings. No calls. He sat in Emma's nursery once more. This time he held her. She babbled, grabbed his tie, pulled it crooked. He laughed. A real laugh. For the first time in months. He thought about the woman on the plane. The stranger who'd shown him something he'd forgotten. He opened his laptop and typed a single email. Subject, community outreach. Restart the body was simple. Effective immediately, all community support programs previously paused are reinstated. No delays. No exceptions. He hit send. Then another email. To Janet. Thank you for reminding me who I wanted to be. A week later, Whitaker Industries held its annual holiday gathering. Richard stood on stage, Emma in his arms. I won't give a long speech, he said. But I will say this: wealth doesn't measure success. Responsibility does. He paused. If a child believes miracles happen at Christmas, the least we can do is not prove them wrong. The room stood, not because he was rich, but because, for once, he was right. And somewhere, a little girl named Lily slept peacefully, believing, just a little more, that the world could be kind. Because one powerful man finally listened.